That kind of reminds me of cantaloupe rind on the ball. It was nice.
Sled runners.
Snowshoes.
It is good to see everybody.
Good to be here.
Glad for those that's kind of, the weather that they able to come back out. That's what all about that now. Sometimes you can get down, seem like it's hard to recuperate.
It's called old age.
All right.
That's what they say.
Huh?
He said it's called old age. I said that's what they say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know.
I think I pushed too many vehicles this during the day. Revelation 6, we wonder if anybody's got anything before we get into the ones that we had been into. We're only down about 5. I think is where we had stopped at, 6 and 5. So we're wondering if anybody has any question on anything, either that since we've been here or since maybe some of the studies and stuff that we've had or things that we had last week and so on. So we wonder if anybody has anything on your heart or mind before we kind of get into some of the things. Anything at all? Anybody go back and Kathy give us a reference? Anybody go back and look at Joel 1?
I did.
Did you read it?
I did.
Anybody else read Joel 1?
I didn't exactly get how. Maybe I will talk about it.
Yeah. Of course, I like to print them off. I think it's right here. I printed it off. Joel 1. I'm just gonna read just a little. I'm not gonna read, it's just 20 verses. I'm not gonna read particularly all, I don't think, unless you really want some things. And I know you said you didn't see the kind of the connection, into it, so it would help if we make a connection, okay? In Joel 1, chapter 1, verse 1, of course, the word of the Lord that came to Joel, the son of Bethuel. Hear this, ye old men, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Hath this been in your days, or even in the days of your fathers? Tell ye your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. That which the palmer worm hath left, hath the locust eaten, and that which the locust hath left, the cankerworm eaten, and that which the cankerworm hath left, hath he the caterpillar eaten. Awake, you drunkards, and weep and howl, and all you drinkers of wine, because of the new wine, for it is cut off from your mouth. For a nation is come up upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath the cheek teeth of a great lion. He hath laid my vine waste, and barked my fig tree. He hath made it clean bare, and cast it away. The branches thereof are made white. Lament like a virgin girdled with a sackcloth for the husband of her youth. The meat offering and the drink offering is cut off from the house of the Lord. The priest, the Lord's ministers, mourn. The field is wasted, the land mourneth, for the corn is wasted. The new wine is dried up, the oil languisheth. Be ye ashamed, you husbandmen, howl, O you vine dressers, for the wheat and for the barley, because the harvest of the field is perished. The vine is dried up, the fig languisheth, the pomegranate tree, the palm tree also, the apple tree, even all the trees of the field are withered, because joy is withered away from the sons of men. Gird yourselves and lament, you priests, howl, you ministers of the altar. Come, lie all night in sackcloth, you ministers of my God, for the meat offering and the drink offering is withholden from the house of your God. sanctify ye a fast, call a solemn assembly, gather the elders and all the inhabitants of the land into the house of the Lord your God, and cry unto the Lord. Alas for the day of the Lord is at hand, and as a destruction from the Almighty shall it come. It is not the meat cut off before your eyes, yea, joy and gladness from the house of our God. I guess I will just read it off. So the seed is rotten under the clods, the garners are laid desolate, the barns are broken down, the corn is withered. How do the beasts groan? The herds of cattle are perplexed because they have no pasture. Yea, the flocks of the sheep are made desolate. O Lord, to thee will I cry, for the fire hath devoured the pastures of the wilderness, and the flame hath burned all the trees of the field. The beasts of the field cry also unto thee, for the rivers of waters are dried up, and the fire hath devoured the pastures of the wilderness. So, you know, we was talking, and I know Kathy had mentioned about read Joel 1 as a reference, and into particularly like chapter 5 and 6. I mean, verse 5 and 6 of chapter 6. So you can see that the prophet here, Joel, you know, the word of the Lord that came to him to tell about all the harshness that had come, and I look at it, get out of it the things of comparison of today. I know you can look and say, well, all the apple trees and this and that, but when you look in the spiritual sense of it, what caused all the spiritual trees and all those things to languish, and why has the destruction come, the palmer worm and the caterpillar and all these things, that it means it's taken away the food and the needs and the necessity of the people. And if you look at it, why is I guess the doctrines, why has the doctrine of Christ been replaced, which is destruction? Why has it been replaced with other things that will bring, well, it's what's bringing the end. If you really look at it, it's saying the same things as, what brought the end in the beginning? And who was preaching against it? Noah. At the preaching of Noah and those things, it brought in that flood. Because you'd sit and think, well, that preaching should have been, and it was. It's not that it wasn't wonderful. It was wonderful. Now, it may have been a warning message to people: repent, get in safety of Christ, get in the ark. But still yet, at that point, because what brought the end, but nobody was listening to it. And he said, as it was in the days of Noah, look at us today. Nobody's listening to it. So in this, he's given the I guess the order or the things that's going to happen. We think that, we think one thing is going to happen and that's it. Then all of a sudden, like this, when the palmer worm hath left, the locust is eaten. You look at what, we look at preaching and teachings and stuff, and we sit and think, well, we move away with the doctrine of Christ that you've got to do something or not to do something, and it's not what God said it should be done, should or should not be done. It's man's ways of thinking that we're going to prosper and do. Remember, we was talking about today's thing is you prosper by monetary things. You give me money, you're going to end up with wealth. You're going to have 10 times more of the amount and all this stuff. Well, we sit and think, and we're no different. I know some of you were there when I was preaching Sunday. We think these things that are happening to us today and all of this modern things, we name it by some other name, but we've studied this subject. There's no new thing under the sun. So you look at it and they think, well, this is not too bad. Then the next thing, here comes the locust. And then here comes, here's the caterpillar, here's the locust, here's the palmer worm. And it just keeps on. Look at us today. It just looks like one bad thing right after another. But the world's saying, and some church assent, that ain't bad. That ain't too. Matter of fact, they're applauding it and grasping hold of it. So he's telling us to lament and that we should be in sackcloth and ashes, spiritually speaking. We should be in sincerity of prayer, because we see the dangers of changing the way of God, and it's the same thing as here. This false teachings and false ways is what is bringing on these things, and we keep looking for the Antichrist, and the Antichrist has been around from the beginning. It's just added to itself more and more and more, and there's times that we can see that God got his people back in gear, if you'd have it, got them back into the motion of worshiping him and looking towards him, and kind of got some things going back again, got it back right. Look at how that in this last time here upon the earth, look what Christ came to set things right. And we see that the church got going again, because the Pharisees and so on like that, and Sadducees and many other heads of religious things had convinced people that in a religious way. Now, that's what I'm trying to express. It's not some kind of organization out here that particularly that we look at that is trying to get people away from Christ. Sometimes it's the inner workings in assemblies, if you want to say church, but the true church is truth. The true church is holy, it's sanctified, and it's led by the Spirit of God. Assemblies and things, and we can sometimes as young converts or young people or unlearned and something like that, we can be easily convinced this is a good thing. And so therefore we go in those directions, and we need that preaching and teaching to pull us back and get us going in a way. Our message on Sunday was, the people, everybody had, all of his people had forsaken him. And, and he got down to where Judah was in trouble. There was only one left. Everybody else, they were in a religious setting, building groves and high places and naming other gods. But he said, we believe in God too. We also believe in God. But they secretly, and just like God don't know about it. And so they had their places of worship. And, and God wasn't going to have that. So, he was going to have to do some things that were drastic to get them back in line. And God has done some things even in our time. And I know we've talked about some things, and I'll hush, and I know probably some's got some different views and ideas, which are good, and so on like that. So, but you look at it, we talked here one time, or I guess mainly I did, but if you put everything on a graph, on a scale, and you see how that we in the last, say, 100 years or 125 years have went in, just as our nation, our people, and as we as Christian people, how have we went? We would be going along having church and, and things, but then people started dropping off and things would happen. Wars had come along, World War I, II, Korea, right on. And then when, one some of the more recent times that stands out was 9/11. But, then all of a sudden you had a population that people started going to church, but it didn't last long. Boy, it started dropping right back off. And, and it's almost like the thing that you see on I don't know what it's called, but the heartbeat, and you can see the thing, and somewhere along the line, we're gonna flatline. I mean, it's no more gonna have any rhythm to it, you know, it's gonna flatline. And, you know, because of things that, you know, but I believe there'll be that little bit left when he returns. But I think it's gonna be on a very little plane, you know, very, very little. Because why? Why are we headed that way? We're supposed to be living in a religious time. I mean, you know, still yet of things, but religion just will not save us. And I know people of different beliefs, and we're a nation that respects different beliefs and so on like that. I guess it's what made us as a great nation as far as things, but still yet in our freedoms and stuff. But when it concerns eternity and of God, unless we got Jesus Christ, we are not going. And the only thing that God is going to honor and is how we have out of our heart. And God knows all of those people in other nations. And I know Kathy and I, we watched a little thing about these little kids in other places, and I mean in some very places that I wouldn't want to be, you know, 71 below zero and all these things and their lifestyles and stuff. And and you sit and think, you know, you feel for them, even as kids, you know, little, I'm talking about little children running around and having to deal in all of that. You wonder why they stay in that, but that's their life way, and they got used to it and things just like we have here. But you wonder, you know, and you really think about those people, even, you know, those adults and stuff that are raising them, and no doubt probably a lot of them are not, and it's not for me to look at and say because I don't know, but you can probably pretty much tell by the information that you're given is that they do, you know, they say some of them they worship, but do they worship God through Jesus Christ? And probably the answer is no. Now they have a religious way, and God knows their heart. Can they break away from those things? Absolutely. Just, you know, all we gotta do is call upon Christ, and I believe He'll help us. So I've hushed.
The thing that came to my mind was what we're talking was Paul telling Peter, I think it was Peter, about why you teaching the Jews one way, the Gentiles another way. And that's should be all brought together.
Peter called
as
him
one.
out on that. Peter called him out on that.
Paul called Peter out.
Yeah, that's what I meant. But
Paul
vice
looked at
versa.
Peter face to face, yeah.
Mhm.
You know, he rebuked him.
Mhm.
You know, he come to him, you know, fire you teaching over here, preaching over here to the Jews and the Gentiles.
Yeah.
You know, something different way. And you look at us, we say, well, that's, you know, they got that straightened out. We don't do that, but we look at it, we still do. I mean, if we, in many different forms, if I preach a different Christ here at this church and I go somewhere else and preach a different Christ in a different way, it's the same thing as what Peter was doing. You know, what am I doing? I'm trying to pacify the congregation.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to satisfy God, but I'm trying to pacify the people.
Preaching to itchy ears.
Yeah. And that's what we have. But, you know, even it was told us that in those, we would be those with itching ears. You're desiring. They want to hear the fables instead of the truth, you know, instead of those things that would help us to keep us that, and as we look at this thing as these time frames, time within time that had come along, and these horses and the things that the seals that were open to us, and those that had come, and they have a similitude of that which is truth. You know, they have that similitude. It looks like that what is of Christ, and they have most of the time we talked about those things of an unjust weight and an unjust balance. And you know, even in the carnal means, you should not, if you're going to sell a bushel of apples, you know, we need to try to make sure as close as we can it's a bushel of apples, and you sell it for the price or whatever, and it should be fair. whatever it might be. And, we shouldn't in the natural dealings, but what about the balances and stuff of what, like we say, and what we preach and what we teach and so like that. It should be a fair balance, and it should be that, in other words, you tell one that they can get to heaven by Jesus Christ. Then you go along and say, well, you just be good and you'll get there. Then we're varying from it. Just because you're young or you're old or you're poor or you're rich or whatever, and you can get in, just because you're trying to satisfy, but you're not trying to satisfy God. God set a standard and said, if anybody comes to the Father, it's got to be through by me. And you can't come to me except the Father who first sent me, draw him. And that drawing power, he said that he's give everybody that measure of faith. And I mean, it's everybody on the tundra, to the frozen wastelands, to the deserts, to the tropical oases everywhere, to here, to there, wherever it's at. That measure of faith to believe in Christ is in everybody. And it's up to us, as individuals to believe in that and step out in that faith that he's given us. So he's given us that measure, so he, on it. Anybody else? If you want to help us out a little bit, Joel, to help link it together?
I went to John 15, and I'm just going to read one verse because it will help us to keep this in mind when we understand Revelation. It's all about the wheat and the barley. We have to keep that in our mind. John 15:1, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. And you have to always keep that in your mind when you're reading Joel, because up here in Joel 11, be ashamed, O ye husbandmen, how, O ye vine dressers, for the wheat and for the barley, because the harvest of the field is perished. There's a reason why that is. They didn't understand the true vine and the true husbandman. So when you see this in Revelation 6, they're coming through, and it's about the wheat and the barley. If you don't have the true husbandman knowing how to dress this word of God, so to speak, how to do this bread, then you mess it up. You don't have the true just measurement, the way God said, measure out the bread to the people. And so when you see that, we see that Abraham knew how to get the correct measure, and God, when the Lord came at the tent, he would partake of what Abraham was going to feed him. So, because Christ is going to sup with you and you with him only in truth. So when you go here on 1 and 6, for a nation has come upon my land, strong and without number, whose teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he hath the cheek teeth of a great lion. That's a nation or a horseman comes through, and they're doing against this word of God. They won't accept the true vine and the true husbandman. They do it another way. Therefore, you cause the people to perish. You are giving out a measurement to them, but it's not in the true measurement the way God said for us to give this bread out. So when you see that, you'll leave the new wine is dried up and the oil languishes. You get to a point that you get down to very scarce, just like, where you preach about the little widow woman. Well, she had very, very little left. Mm-hmm. And if you just hang on, God will send you some help if you want. And because we should have full measures. The Spirit was not given in measure to Christ. He had it full. He knew it all. And so we see this. If you depend on Christ, we can have the full measurement. We can have it and give it back, and that's what God will accept. So when you see this, you see even all the trees of the field are withered, because joy is withered away from the sons of men. What joy do we have? My joy should be in Christ Jesus, because he had the joy. He said he was filled with joy and gladness above everybody because he pleased God. So through that pleasing of Christ unto the Father, then if we honor accept the measurement and how we're supposed to do. And so when we do that, there's consequences to it. So I went back to, Isaiah 9, which is also Deuteronomy 28, but I won't go back there. But it's about the curse, and why the curse is up on the land is because we leave off the word of God. We start saying we can do it this way, and that's, and Deuteronomy 28 is another one. It's Joel also, and it's also Revelation. We don't want to go the way God said for us to go, which will go back to the garden always, and surely thou shalt not die. You know, we don't want it the way God said for us to be partakers. So in Isaiah 9 and 14, therefore the Lord will cut off from Israel head and tail, branch and rush in one day. The ancient and honorable, he is the head, and the prophet that teacheth lies, he is the tail. Remember we went back there, I guess it's a couple weeks ago, about they have power in their tail and they do hurt. This is the prophet that teaches lies. That's what he's talking about. When we trust in the prophet that will teach the lie, we don't have the true bread. We may think we're partaking of the wheat and barley, but it's not going to give us life. We have to have the true, exact measurement, the way God said to measure and give this bread out to men and women, just as feeding the 5,000, they had the barley. We have to understand that that goes all the way through. It's how am I going to present this word to you? How am I going to give you this? And there are some that has a, you know, like some of the preachers and then there's the church, the wheat and the barley, so to speak. And then each time frame, if you wanted to look at it, there's 3 in each time frame, which you'll get a measurement of 12 at the end of it all. So there's that coming together in each time frame. So when you see that horseman come through and the measurement of the wheat and the barley, that's what he's talking about. You've not done it the way that I said for it to be handed out. And so therefore we see that through all the time frames. When they didn't want the preaching and the teaching, Christ would say, how come you don't understand my language? Because you are saying you're of God, therefore you would know who I am. And they didn't recognize, they couldn't see him. Some could, because the truth has always been around. But still yet, that's the same story as Revelation. If we don't do it this way, the palmer worm, there'll be something left after they come along. Something else will come along, something else and something else. And that's what you're seeing in this progression in Revelation 6 also. You see this horse come on, they conquer you. They put you in an enslavement with doctrines, whatever it be. It's anything outside of Christ, whether it's a doctrine in a church or whatever, you're still enslaved in something that's not set you free. So the next one comes along, look at it as the locust. What they left off, this one took upon themselves, as we talked about, the second horseman, or the third one, or the fourth one. You'll see them come along, and they're not giving you what's needful, taking peace from the earth. If we give the true word of God, we have peace in our hearts and soul and mind. Christ gives us the peace that nobody else can give. But the world has a peace that they want to give you. So that's what he's talking about. How do we present this word? Who is the true husbandman? Who is the vine? And then we take that and we dress the wheat and the barley? Do we pass this on to the church and are preachers preaching that, you know, in that sense when they go unto the congregation? Because he is set a little bit different from the church, so to speak. The church receives bread, and so does the man of God, and he's giving that out. And so when you say, is not the meat, this is 1 and 16 of Joel, is not the meat cut off before our eyes, yea, joy and gladness from the house of God? The joy and the gladness is always about the preaching of Christ. David, return unto me the joy of thy salvation. And we see that, of course, Hebrews 1. the gladness above all fellows was through Christ. You can't have joy and gladness without Christ. Remember, in Revelations 2, they talked about giving gifts and they had rejoicing, and they rejoiced only in that moment. And we don't rejoice in that, but you'll see that they give gifts unto men, but they're not giving the true gift. So we're seeing the meat is cut off from the house, and we want to know what our meat is. We want to know what keeps us alive, and Jesus is the only thing that keeps the church and the preachers alive.
Okay, you pretty much grasp what she's saying on it. Look at it like this. In their time frame, they had their things going on just as we do now. And the ones before them, before Joel's time, they had their things that was trying to take peace from the earth. Christ said, my peace I give unto thee. Remember what she said. We got peace, we have the gladness, and so on. In their time, what about ours? Right now? Are they not trying to take peace from? He said, my peace I give unto thee. Not as what? The world gives. They give peace too, but it's not his peace. But such as I give unto thee, okay? So he gives us peace. And that peace is eternal. It's forever. You can, we've got trouble, heartache, sorrows, and it will continue to come and roll in our personal lives, but you've got the peace of Christ, knowing that you've got a better place to go, that you've got a promise. And then I wrote some things down as she was talking, like in partiality or in partial things, that they give a measure. They will talk a certain thing in, it's only given little tidbits to get you a little things that they say, a little, it could be even in, you think like a little jingle that a commercial's trying to sell you something. I can remember one back a long time ago about Ford having a better idea. That stuck with me.
Sure did.
Double Mint Twins, remember them? All of these things, and they'll stick with you. They say them, and and these little jingles that you have, it sticks with you. Okay, things that they say religiously will stick with you, but they are there on that side to pull you away from Christ. I'm not saying those jingles were bad or anything like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that was commercials to sell you products. But I'm using that as an example. So you'll see things in partiality as they come, and they'll preach to you and teach to you of certain ways that with, how should I say, with force. They'll say it with confidence, and you can look and say that they probably believe that. And I'll give you an example. And I know you've heard me say it, and I've said it here. You cannot get to heaven without Jesus Christ. Well, why are we preaching you can get to heaven without Jesus? In our local churches, too. It's a simple doctrine. The Jews will have another chance. Or you. When will they have that chance? In the 1,000 years. That's what they're saying to us. And they're saying, they're preaching that, and they believe that. And they've preached that for years now. Okay, so they're saying that God's going to give his chosen people, in quotations, whatever you want, parentheses, whatever, another chance. So then, yeah, there you go, respect of persons. They're saying that God has respect for a certain region, a certain nationality, a certain way. Even he's going to allow them, but what about all those that died yesterday? Didn't believe in Christ. Where are they left off at? But they say they're God's chosen people. And the only ones that are truly is the Jews. But do we understand what a Jew is? We are Jews.
Yeah.
It's not about where your color of skin or region or lineage and all that stuff. A Jew is one of the heart. But see, we leave that off. And just because we want a doctrine to be able, because we've said it, we believe, and we look at some of these things here in Revelation, and we've got such great insights, they say, onto these, but do they truly see? Okay, so they do it in, and there's a one particular way, and then we can break those things down in subdivisions if you want to have it. Within denominations, we say you got to do certain things to be able to remain in fellowship with God that God's not saying that you have to do because we misunderstand God's work. That it was through Christ. Okay, we misunderstand the way that God set this out, and Christ came to set those things in order, and He made some of the religious Jews angry, mad. You know, when John the Baptist and Christ too looked at them and said, well, you're hypocrites, you're vipers, you know. They got offended at that because He was trying not to hurt them, but to help them, to get them stirred up, to look and see that He was the only begotten Son of God. And He was the Word that had spoken to Abraham. It was the same thing. And that Abraham longed for his day, Moses longed for his day, and saw it and rejoiced at his day. So, you know, I guess the thing that try to help us to make the connection is that these things were helping or were taking place in Joel. We can go back and look and see in his time, this prophet's time. You can go back in Isaiah's time, that what I preached about Sunday, and you could see he lived in the time of hardships of other nations. The Assyrian nation had come against Hezekiah and told him don't believe in God, but they stood fast, and he brought the letter before God, and God said they'll not shoot an arrow at this thing. They'll not come into my city. This one that I've said it. God will not allow it to come into your life if you'll look towards Him. We got to believe He's strong enough, and He is. He has all power. Christ has all power, both in heaven and earth, to help us. He will not allow that sin to come if we look towards Him. He will not allow that. And you look and see the results of it, that angel came through, and they all were, I believe it was 185,000 dead corpses.
I think also you have to remember, like, thinking about this word and concentrating on how we are partakers, that how it's measured or meted unto us. Because in Matthew it says, how you met it out, that's how it's going to be measured back to you. So what we are, if we sow to the flesh, we reap corruption. If we sow to the Spirit, we reap life everlasting. So that's two different ways of sowing. And remember, two women are always grinding at the mill. So which bread are we going to be partakers of?
Both of them were grinding at the mill. One was taken and one was left.
So here in Exodus 16, I'm just going to read a little bit of it, but it's
what now?
Exodus 16 and 17. It shows us how God had told us to go out and gather, and what we do when we leave it off or do it a different way. That's what he's talking about. When we go some other way and not the way God has set out for the instructions for us to do. And the children of Israel did so and gathered, some more or some less, and we see that. That's what it's talking about, the wheat and the barley too. And when they did met it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some of them left of it until the morning. It bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. Our word, when we gather it the right way, it fulfills us the right way. When we do it a different way, there's a consequence. There's something that devours our harvest or our understanding. And so, when you go on down, and you see, and Moses said, eat that today, for today is the Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. You're not gonna find this word, in a sense, out in here in the world. We're to find the word the way that God has instructed us to find it. And so sometimes we see people are still trying to gather it some other way. We're trying to, other people are trying to feed it to us some other way. And so throughout the whole Word of God, you see that in each section of time. It's not that it's, it just comes, but their image is the same in all time frames. I mean, they rebrand their image, so to speak. I mean, that white horse, that red, you know, I mean, they look like they've changed the color, but that's all it's done. They're still not, we see like Egypt, what it looked like, then the Babylonians, and then which at Persians or Romans or us today. The image may be, we may be rebranding it as something, but the first beast is, and the last one, it's just that's the first one. You've changed the Word of God. And that's what, when they did, Egypt was the ruler of all the earth, when the Babylonians was the ruler, they changed it, but their image was still the same. And what is the image of man that doesn't have the change through Christ? It's of the earth, it's sensual, it's devilish. And so we won't have the true Word of God, and we can't feed it to the people and give them life. People are feeding people with bread right now, and Jeremiah said, but they're actually giving them death. So the truth of God's Word is important. How we hand out this bread of life to people, and how what we say this bread does, who this bread is, and where this bread came from.
Make any questions? Look at Revelation 13 and 12.
Thirteen, 12?
Yeah, 13, 12. Verse 11 and 12, I'll read it. Beast from the earth. You know, she said that first beast and then this last beast, it's the same thing. But they rebrand themselves. They come along. Remember the message, those that was down there Sunday. We look at the woke generation that, you know, we've put a name to it now. We're woke. We've got, boy, we're with it. I mean, we've woke up. We know what is the best. We're just, hey, ain't nobody been like us. We just rebranded it. You know, we just got a new way of calling it sin. You know, or covering up sin, I should say. Smoothing it over by calling it some kind, well, we really know what's truth is now. We're woke. Well, you know, the best thing is to do all the destruction that you can. Make sure you get plenty of watches and tennis shoes when you come out of there. You're woke. Alright? Verse 11, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exercises all the power of what? The first beast. The very first. They're trying to, what did he say for us? He said, look at the beginning of our fathers. I know your father. He was a liar from where? From the beginning. Your father was a liar from the beginning. It's not talking about your daddy. It's talking about your beliefs and those things that's been handed down throughout time, throughout the thousands of years that we've been here. It's the same thing. That lie from the beginning is the same lie as if we do it today. So, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. Go back to, whose deadly wound was healed. We'll get it knocked down. David lopped off that head with what? His own sword. That giant's, Goliath's own sword. So we may stay it off in our time and in impartiality of time. If we were alive, let's say 200 years ago, we may have seen maybe that the assemblies and believers, I'm just saying a possibility, had the power with God, trusted in God, and loved God and loved each other. And if something came up, we cut it down. We destroyed it. We got it out of the way. But then it would rear its ugly head right back up. We would get lax, and that's the way it's been throughout even in all the other times, such as what the Goliath represents. He came up, made all the people of Israel tremble, afraid, until one of God's men, David, a man after God's own heart, who had looked like to the world, you can't destroy that thing. But boy, he did. He didn't go in his own power. He just went in the Lord's power with that stone, and which it represents. And even 4 left over in a pouch, in that little script, shepherd's pouch, because he had some brothers, and for it would be there. We can get into that power the same place. We can have that same stones that are there. We can destroy. And so, but he wound that thing up, and God directed that rock, okay, that stone, which represents Christ. And if we'll go with that, we can fight our battles today. So they look and look over at 15. I've got mine highlighted in some places. Look at what it does. He gives life to and had power to give life to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many would not worship the image should be killed. So we look at it and we say, and this is the mark, and we've come down through the years, and it's on the hand, and it's the forehead, and it's the computer chip, and it's a tattoo, and it's a social security number. As time changes, we have to change. He started out in the 20s and stuff. People scared to death to get a social security number, afraid they was going to get 666. And we got people today that believe it. They won't take a phone number, a 666. Won't take change back. And I know I've said that before. Won't have an address of it, thinking that that's all. That's a curse and those things of it. And even people that don't even go to church, they won't even take it, and all those things. And so we've got it so misconstrued, and we've got it so, why? It's because we've preached it and taught it to people. And we can't, and it's hard to get people to believe it's a thing of death. That the only way you're going to get rid of that mark, get rid of that death, is through Christ. Then we have a mark on our forehead, too, as Christians. It's what, let this mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus. It's those things that God looks and knows all of His. In all of the nations, God knows everybody tonight that are His. Now that's some astounding things of God. Power. And, He's the only one that is omnipotent. He's the one that is everywhere. And so He knows the hearts and the minds of everybody. He knows His people that are by the heart truly are saved. But they give that power that it can speak. When we give over to the doctrine of certain things in our assemblies, things like that, and we're just feeding it more power. And sometimes, they have to have the numbers. They have to have people behind them that has that numbers. But God said, if I be for you. He didn't say me and somebody else, but he said, if I be for you, who can be against you? So do you need somebody else? You only need God. That's what you need. And you can't have God. We can say that with the truth. You cannot have God without Christ, and you cannot have Christ without the Holy Spirit. And these three are one. You've got Christ, you've got God. You've got the Spirit, you've got Christ and God. And all of them links together. So you can see they may try to come through, as she said, on it. They just rebrand it, call it something else, try to fancy it up, make it come in a different way. And they did all down through these times. Even here in Joel, they had them, and in partiality, as she was talking about, those that would come, the palmer worm, then the locust, and what locust, there'll be those that'll come along to help pull a little more away, take away the truth of God, and get you to move further and further away. And the more that they eat, look at it, just sit and think of it as in the natural. These worms and these caterpillars and locusts and things, even in the natural. If one comes and you gotta plant this tall, and only one of them comes and hits a little bit of it, we say, well, I got some of that left. And then the next thing that comes along, and the caterpillar and rhino, and you ain't got much anything to nibble at. It's just destroyed, even in the natural. And you sit and think, well, if I can get rid of that palmer worm, I'll be all right, And then the next thing you know, here come the locust, and after the locust was the canker worm, and and what the caterpillar thing. So he come and just completely was, it gets less and less, even in the natural. But what about the spiritual sense? If they come with their false teaching and doctrines to move you away from the truth, it's just by another brand or another name or another jingle, another religious philosophy, doctrine, man's way, of things. That if you'll do this, you'll be real close with God. If you don't do this, you'll be real close with God.
I think also you have to look at Joel as that nation that come through as a lion. Well, Satan is as a roaring lion.
He's as a roaring lion.
But he's not the lion of the tribe of Judah. Mm-hmm. And so we have to remember there's also, you look at the eagles and you'll find out there's one of the image of that, but it's the image of the earthly image, and not the spiritual, because God, or Jesus came in the image of the invisible God. And so, when we see all this, it becomes an easier story to look upon. But I went to 2 Corinthians 10 and 12, because this is the comparison sometimes that we try to compare ourselves to someone else, but we must have the measure like in Ephesians. When the church comes up to the measure that is Jesus Christ, that's the measure God is pleased with. So 2 Corinthians 10 and 12, for we dare not make ourselves of the number or compare ourselves with some that commend themselves, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. But we will not boast of things without our measure, but according to the measure of the rule which God has distributed to us, a measure to reach even unto you. For we stretch not ourselves beyond our measure, as though we reach not unto you, for we are come as far as you also in preaching the gospel of Christ. Sometimes when Paul was Saul, he went beyond the measure of the word. He thought he knew. And sometimes we're like that. We're comparing ourselves with someone else. And this is what they do, and they're highly esteemed, and we think, let's compare ourselves with them. And sometimes they look like they have the great power of God on their side, until truth comes. Once truth comes, as I said, I guess it was last week, when Christ came, then he saw Satan as lightning fall down. They set themselves up into heaven. That's where the fire, they said, come down from. They had that image. It was the cause of death. Their number I mean, the image, the number, the mark, and the name is easily to be seen. And so but when truth comes, as we said on the Mount of Transfiguration, there's a revealing of Christ, and then there's also a revealing of who that man of sin is. This word reveals both things at the same time. It reveals light and it reveals darkness. And so in each time frame, the revealing was back there in the garden. God had already told us what to do. He didn't have to give anymore. It was all there. Because we can't read it and understand it, doesn't make it not true. Doesn't make that it's not everything there, because it is. Because he said in this last time, it'll be as the days of Noah. It's the same thing. They're doing the same thing. And the violence that was filling the earth then, because violent men try to do things with violence. They don't have the peace of God, and they don't know how to take and do things peacefully through the Word. So they come along, and it's to kill, steal, and destroy. And that's the way it will always be. When you see these in Revelation go through, and you see destruction, because Christ said, I didn't come to destroy men's lives, but I came to give them salvation. I came to heal them. And you see that, like he's talking about in Revelation 13, I know, I used to think when I was young, I'd never be able to understand this. And you know why I couldn't? Because I was listening to so many people, and yet God kept saying, nudging me, and I would think, but who am I? But God wants us to understand and know. He really wants to be our help. And so you see that deadly wound was healed. And I can remember when I was first saved, they thought that was Mikhail Gorbachev because he had a birthmark on his head. And that had to be the mark. And so, and now you look back and there was preachers preaching that as a truth. Well, we know that can't be. Because we move forward, do we understand then and say, oh, it can't be because we see it now. But why couldn't we see it right then? But the more we gather of this word, what we know for sure, just like we have no lack. So it's kind of like how much measurement. The more we want to know. So, and the deadly wound was healed because there was more time. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest will always be upon the earth while the earth remaineth. But now this last time, there's not anything else. It's up because this beast or Satan was cast alive. And we have to understand that part too. Where the beast and the false prophet are. That beast from the beginning and the false prophet's already cast down into hell. So we have to see that this last one is going to go exactly where they are.
For the first one.
Yeah, it's all the same thing. It's that sometimes we made it to our own comparison of each other. And what we should have been doing was asking God, because He's not withholding truth from us. I mean, He wanted Paul to know. He wants Kathy to know. So all of these things, that Revelation 6 looks like a big mystery till the truth comes along and it's simply said, then you can say, well, I can see that. And it's history, no matter what I watch, and I like to watch history and places on TV, but I also, when I'm watching, the Word of God's in my mind. What does it mean when I'm watching and I apply the Word of God to it? It doesn't become confusing. And it's the same way with these horsemen. When they come through the land, they do a certain thing. They done it the same way in Egypt. They do it the same way in the Babylonian. And you know what we're doing it now? We're doing it the same thing. We're not wanting the white horse that Christ sits on, and the armies do follow him. And just as he told the Babylonians and everything, you'll see that the armies of heaven do rule. He'll only let us go so far.
Give you the, 78? Give you the desires of your heart. Psalm 78. Give you the desires of your heart. So, I know times it's about 15 after 7, if that's correct back there. So, just to kind of sum it up, they will come into 6, and the reason of the thing of Joel saying, you letting us look and see that those things also have been and they are now. But this, we have to realize, this world needs to realize this is it. This thing's getting ready to roll up like a scroll. I mean, this world's gonna be departed. I mean, it's gonna be burned up. So, but while, even as of yet, they'll only come in partial, a measure, so much that they're selling their words and they're trying to move you away. But as Kathy said, only goes so far. See thou hurt not the oil and the wine. There's certain things God, in other words, there's only so far that God will allow the falsehood to go. And God's going to say, enough is enough. So anybody got any?
Well, he said you can do nothing against the truth.
That's right.
And it looks like sometimes that they are, but you can't. It's forever settled in the heavens. Because here on earth, I can come against the word, or I could take, in a sense, they took Christ's life from the earth, as Daniel would prophesy of. But it was cut off not because of him, but because of us, in a sense, So we see this. But I went back to 2 Kings, and I know you'd preach on this, which is Revelation also. But there's a promise they make unto you. And they done the same thing with God's people back then. And all we got to do, I'll let you live a Christian life. I just want you to be a part of us, though. So he said in 2 Kings 18:31, hearken not to Hezekiah, for thus saith the king of Assyria, make an agreement with me by a present. Come out to me, and then eat ye every man of his own vine, every one of his fig tree, drink ye every one the waters of his cistern, until I come and take you away to a land like your own, a land of corn, and wine, a land of bread, and vineyards, a land of oil, olive, and of honey, that ye may live and not die. Now take that back to the garden. You shall surely not die if you come into our beliefs. I'll let you have some of yours, but only a portion.
Yeah.
And then that'll be taken away from you also. You can't be of God and of the world. You can't be, I'll say this of a man that I know, he used to want to be married and single at the same time. Can't be married and single at the same time. But that's the way we are sometimes with God, because Jesus is the husband of the church. We want to be married to the church, but I still want to be single when I go out. I want to leave that to this side. And that way, when I'm out here, it's just me, and I get to do what I want to do. Don't work that way.
Go to church on Sunday and do whatever you want to on Monday. And then you come right back. You can't do it. God said, thou shalt have no other. That becomes a God to us. And thou shalt have no other gods before me. I'm a jealous God. Anything else? Hopefully that makes some connection anyway with Joel. It's just things of time and how that Joel and them was telling their people, and God was speaking through Joel. Look what's happened to you in Joel's time. Look what's happened to you. The meat's gone, and all this kind of thing. And look at us today.
I guess we should say when I went back to penny, we do need to realize there's a penny that Caesar owns, and then there's a penny that Christ offers you in Matthew 20 to come in to his vineyard and work. And everyone from the first to the 11th hour all got a penny. The reward is the same for us in his vineyard. We all receive the same thing, but the reward for Caesar also is the same thing, death and hell. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reward for that penny also.
Yeah.
You
What you
work
do.
in it one way or the other.
What you do for Caesar is a reward. And It's a different reward, different type of penny than what Christ offers.
Didn't it say rejoice for you've already received your reward?
Yeah. You work for the world and not for Christ. No matter where we're doing what we would say good works, because it's not, and we should be doing good works, okay, because of love. But it does not matter. You can put it in this way. You know, a lot of people look and say, well, I feed everybody. Thought that Wasper was gonna lie.
Where did it go?
Right there in the, I believe it's a Wasper, right
It
there in the
is.
aisle. But, you know, we look, we feed everybody, we clothe everybody, we do all of these things. And a lot of people do it thinking they're gonna get a greater reward
Mm-hmm.
just because we do that. But the world does that too. Ours needs to be because we're doing it for Christ, because of love, you know. Anything?
Your full measure maybe 35, but the other
Squeeze
one
it,
has a
hurt you.
full measure of 60, and then there's the full measure of 100. Sometimes some young, you know, old, middle age or young, younger ones cannot have sometimes that full measure yet. There are elders in the church, and they should know more.
Yeah.
They should be the fathers of the church, feeding the younger ones, and then hopefully they grow up and have more measure. You know, it is, the more you study, the more you grow, the more you learn. And he said, take my yoke upon me, upon you and learn of me. And so Paul was a father to Timothy. And I mean, we have to understand that's a spiritual father that was to give him all the things that he had grown and God had helped him with. And you know, we should freely give this. What God has shown you, you should want to give it freely. You shouldn't be saying, Kathy, I'll tell you some secrets if you do this or that, and preachers are like that. They're offering people what they think is a mystery of God's word, but with a price tag to it.
And they want to leave that mystery there. You know, they don't want to tell you freely, tell you what they think it is. They've got to come up with some, as we said, a new gimmick. If that didn't work in the 20s, let's catch it in the 60s, let's catch it in the 70s and the 80s, and now we're in this vast electronic age, and so therefore it's got to be a computer chip. And it's not that they might not, I mean, they might put a computer chip in it knowingly or unknowingly into you. Who knows? But it still ain't the mark.
I don't think way back then they had computers even thought about a computer chip.
You know, and you sit and think, well, how did your forefathers, let's go back 200 years, if they died, well, you know, they were, some of them no doubt were preaching this, maybe not in the way that they had true understanding, but then, you know, where were they accountable then for the mark of the beast? How were they accountable? And if all of us in here pass on away,
But some preachers preach that the mark of the beast is not yet come.
It's not yet come.
So that's why that
so
preacher-
why would God have respect of persons that, and we think, well, we're getting closer, you know, I've got to be aware that I don't take that mark. You know, that I make sure that they don't come with that tattoo needle and do something other, or the chip, or whatever. And we keep people on edge and scared to death of it, when it's simply, our forefathers had to refuse the mark also. Death. And if they refused it, they never died. And it all links together, right? We studied about the resurrection, all that, it all comes together. You know, you do not, they've never died. They're the presence of God. They've never died. The body died off because no matter how good you are with Christ, it's going to die. It's got to leave. But the soul and the spirit goes to God. And if we don't have it, we enter in to that place of death and hell, and then death and hell is going to be delivered up, cast alive into the lake of fire. Where the beast, as she said, where the beast and the false prophet are. Those first, second, third, fourth, in now to their time.
Well, you see that in Isaiah too, as you, the man that slides down the pit, sliding down through the times of history, really, and seeing all those that were before him. And is this the man that made the world, the
deceived them.
wilderness, and
Mhm.
shook the nation? Because it's just a man. There's no
See?
power.
Yep. All right, let's be dismissed. It's a pushing 7:30, it's about as hard